Welcome to the Empathy Tour live event. Emily and I are so pleased to see some friendly faces on the call, and we'd like to welcome you here with why we are all joined together today. So we're here to step into the power and possibility of 2020. This year has brought waves upon waves of ripple effects, consequences of actions that have been brewing for decades. And we know and all recognize that we are at a turning point in history. So we're here because we want to better influence the teams and organizations that we lead. We want to make a difference. We want to learn how to build successful, innovative, inclusive, and resilient organizations under the pressure of a deeply volatile ecosystem. And I'll be the first to admit that we are experiencing lots of volatility. So let's honor the fact that we're here for our deepest, highest purpose and to step into the world with the full power of our leadership and our creativity. So thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for being here. And we will be exploring systems thinking really throughout today and really throughout the Empathy Tour, where we really honor who we are individually and that intimacy of our own personal connection with ourselves and what is moving us with these larger systems. So one of the things we learned recently is that the American Sign Language sign for empathy is holding your heart and putting your hand forward. So I request everybody do this. Hold your heart, doesn't matter which hand you do, hold your heart. We're here to honor you and your unique experience in the world and all of that you are learning and unlearning, all that you are sensing, all that you are digesting. We honor you, we honor your body, your presence, your gifts for the world, and you are very welcome here. We need you. Thank you for being here today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for teaching that to us, Emily. I love it. I'm going to teach that to my daughter this evening. Empathy. So what is the Empathy Tour and who is it for? So the Empathy Tour is a research and marketing campaign that's intended to explore and amplify three things. One, bold leadership. Two, creative action. And three, evolutionary business. The primary audience for the Empathy Tour are business leaders and executives who are influencing organizations and systems and seeking guidance on how to step into the moment of this year. We're also here for team leaders, for organizational development folks, our people, and anybody else that wants to lead change and really step into this moment. This is for you. Now, what to expect today in terms of the vibe, the feeling, is candid, real talk. So Emily and I really want to speak openly about our experiences, what we've been learning, our intentions. And so I'd like to just set the expectation right now that we'll be speaking very openly and authentically about power dynamics, about mainstream business culture, about the different things that we see that we feel we need to learn from, because ultimately creative action is about acknowledging the tension and the discomfort that we're all feeling right now. And despite that, to move into that discomfort for the purpose of our highest good, for the greater good.
You're here. And so what we'll cover today in the span between here and the top of the hour is we'll be talking about why we started the tour. For the design nerds and just to see the beauty of what we, our journey of creating and designing this tour. We'll take you behind the scenes on that process a bit. We'll also talk about who we featured and why. And we're also going to cover each of the questions that we interviewed. We asked all of these leaders, and we're going to explore all the emergent themes that came up from those interviews. And please stay till the end. We're going to tell you more about what's coming in 2021. We're going to tell you some of the final guests we have on the Empathy Tour, and you'll have a chance to influence who the final guest will be. And we also have some other goodies and ways to engage with us. So please stay till the end. And here we go. Let's introduce each other, or introduce ourselves. Jyoti, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, I'd be happy to. And Autumn's saying, can we turn our volume up? So I will figure that out in just a second, but I'll have Emily do that. So yeah, I am Jyoti Jani Patel, and I am the founder of Spill, an organizational design consultancy, which I started 2 years ago after leading change at Boeing for 13 years. And my work in the world is really to partner with executive teams and organizational leaders to promote three things: to promote accessing our deepest power and creativity, to promote 2, cultures of equity and belonging, and 3, to design organizations that are aligned with a future that works for everybody. So this year, when COVID hit, I knew that there was an opportunity for us to really slow down and listen to what the system is really telling us, and for us to really pay attention to and make meaning from the events of this year. And so we wanted to, Emily and I both wanted to listen, to really listen to what our target users, what our community are talking about and learning, so that we could better make meaning and understand how to respond. And so, you know, collaborating with Emily has been just a joy and a saving grace through this year. You know, we're integrating various aspects of our identities through the Empathy Tour, our identities as mothers, as artists, as consultants and facilitators, and guides to the people and other leaders that we know want to step into this moment with us too. And so we're also integrating user research, marketing, and ultimately activism on our journey to building our businesses, to ultimately make a greater impact in the world.
Absolutely. Jyoti and I have been talking about how this has been our activism work. We have not taken to the streets like a lot of our friends and colleagues have, but this has been our way of speaking up for what we believe, what really matters, and influencing where we can. And for those who don't know me, I'm Emily Griffin. My career spans entertainment and technology, leading creative teams for the last 20 or so years up and down the West Coast. So hello to my San Francisco and my LA crew. We're all spread out now. But yeah, my career has spanned broadcasting, magazines, music licensing, record labels, and also events, campaigns, and more recently, digital products. And the Empathy Tour for me is very much my shifting from really leading with product management into more culture design. So I'm really excited to really help fortify revolutionary companies and support visionary leaders who really are committed to people and committed to what's possible for humanity.
Yep, and you'll see the artist side of Emily and both of our work just shine through the Empathy Tour. But so let's take a few minutes to really talk about our deeper why, and why we decided to embark on this journey in fall 2020. And, you know, for this, I really just want to speak to my role as a mother. You know, when I started my consultancy 2 years ago, I wasn't trying to do equity work. I wasn't trying to do activism work. I wanted to help organizations be more effective and really be stronger and healthier. But when I saw everything that was happening this year, I knew as a mother that's so invested in a future that I want my daughters to really grow up in and to be able to succeed and thrive in, that I couldn't sit back and not take a stand against what I saw, what I was witnessing happening and witnessing unfold in our world. And, you know, the tour is really ultimately in response to that deep desire for the future to be better. You know, we're at a crossroads, and we can see right now the very two distinct journeys we can take. And recent events only reveal underlying problems that have been simmering in our system for years, for decades. And so why now? You know, this is this is our world, and our world is telling us to stop and to listen. And I believe from the deepest part of my being that we must pay attention to what we're hearing right now in the system, because everything depends on it. Everything is connected and everything is at stake.
Thank you, Jyoti. And Jyoti, that just came out of your mouth, really. When we were shooting our video back in August, everything is connected, everything is at stake, just really sums it up. And I put this collage together just to show these are world events that have happened just since we launched the tour on September 21st. And unless you've been living under a rock, you already know that all of this has happened. We're in the midst of this. And this is what, we were in that sensing place of really like, which way are we going to go? Like this, humanity is really at that, staying alive and survival moment, and also that opportunity to really come alive and really, become the greatest expression of who we can really be. And so just in these last few weeks to see the conversation and the swell behind the conversation for mental health and Black Lives Matter and resetting capitalism and political change, and the climate crisis, and even the ethics of technology. Like everyone's watched The Social Dilemma. Like these are conversations now in the zeitgeist and at the dinner table and as they should be. So we are very much a reflection of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I want to transition us into talking about our design process a bit. As with any design process, we always start with how might we's to really open up and explore what's possible. And so our how might we's are this. We'll just share these with you and you can see them on your screen. How might we launch a public research campaign to generate awareness of the key issues and solutions on our radar? We want to highlight the interviewees while elevating their knowledge and expertise. How might we use our creative superpowers to create an artifact from these interviews that can be felt and shared, leveraging the experiences and stories as teaching tools, democratizing the process, and inviting people to come with us on our journey? And how can we seed provocative topics that bloom into something people can't stop talking about and amplifies what we stand for and what we're fighting for? This is very much where we began with the Empathy Tour, and to see it come to fruition and see the collective awareness also bring so much energy and creativity to all of this has been really, really amazing. So our brand ended up here, but it didn't start here. And I will say we had a really transformational and very clarifying moment using the story brand model. Story brand is a book. It's also a tool and a digital tool that can be used to help clarify messaging. And in this process, we name, you name the hero, you name the villain. It's what speaks to people is storytelling. And so in this journey, our guests are, you who are here today, you are the hero. And we are the guide, we play the guides. And in order to take you on the journey, we have to name the villain. And so very much like naming the villain, I'll stop sharing for a second just for us to be able to connect about this, because this was a really pivotal point for us, Jyoti.
Yeah.
Naming the villain of the story. And so share what we landed on.
Yeah, it's so interesting because as creative facilitators, we know the power in using metaphor to really unearth and uncover the story that we want to tell. And so we knew, like, if we're fighting for something and we're taking a stand and we look at all of those signals in the system that Emily just shared with you on that collage, they are connected. And what is the villain? How does naming the villain empower us to create a persona that can then help us fight that villain and to recognize it when we see it in ourselves, in other people, in our organizations and beyond? And so we named the villain mainstream business culture. And there's so much that's wrapped up into that. There's elements of the patriarchy, there's elements of greed, of growth at any cost, of extractionism, and just feeling entitled, a sense of entitlement to so much. And so, you know, we found that really naming that villain helped us to understand that the villain is complicated. It's not any one of those things. It's the intersection of many things. And when we just say we're fighting the patriarchy, or we just say we're fighting racism, it doesn't capture everything. And so, you know, we wanted to share that with you because that was really helpful for us. And we do want to actually just do a little poll real quick in the chat and to hear your thoughts on the villain. Like when you think about what you're taking a stand against in the world, through your work, through your life, through how you show up, who or what are you fighting against, and how would you name it? I love it. You know, it's so funny because after we named the villain, I was chatting with Emily and she shared a dream that she had about the villain. I gotta let you share this story, Emily.
Yeah, it was, and actually, it's now been a recurring dream. So in my dream, I actually confronted the villain and was in a dream with this being that really held power and just had this air of harm around it, and very much was, you know, being in this being's presence, there was that feeling of like there was harm about to be done, and it was scary. And but I also, in this dream, what was so beautiful is that I found a way to kind of like pierce the veil and get to the other side. And on the other side of this veil, I was met with helpers and other people who are all focused on that realm where the villain was ruling, and really like loving, you know, sending a lot of energy and love and really actually like influencing that system from the outside. But I have this power in that dream to go like kind of between worlds, which is very much what a lot of, and we'll get into this more as we talk about the emergent themes from the stories that we heard, is that we're very much living in this paradoxical time where we are having to live in a lot of these systems and also change them from the inside. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, so I see some folks sharing their villains in the chat. Renee says lack of curiosity. Mela says fear. Autumn, the villain is the resistance to a change that includes everyone in a positive way. So much goodness there. And, you know, and ultimately, Emily, like through your story, I think about the importance of allowing or inviting that villain in. Like we can't fight the villain unless we know the villain. And so much of navigating this tension is recognizing there's a tension, but inviting the villain in anyway, instead of feeling resistance to it, pushing it out, being in a state of denial. Like we have to go sit next to that villain. We have to get to know that villain intimately if we have a chance of taking it down. So yeah, it's just so beautiful to recognize that.
A webinar all about that, because it is really powerful. Just the power of story, we all know, is just like, and us coming together and, you know, and finding that collective fuel to really you know, live in that paradox and that kind of cognitive dissonance that we're living in, and having to have our own systems of power and hierarchies that we perpetuate and live in while also dismantling it at the same time. Yeah, so it's so rich. And I do want to move us on because I want to share the nerdy design stuff, which I know some of you will appreciate. So this is where we landed. We worked with a wonderful couple out of North Carolina, Monica and Tony Lettuce, on our branding. And this is the palette and the logo we ended up with, but this is where we started. So you can see we were like hanging out with tour themes, and there was a lot, they're hand lettering artists. So there was a lot coming through around just, yeah, what are we trying to communicate here? And this is like the nuts and bolts of building a brand. What are we communicating? What's resonating? Even before we started playing with colors, you know, playing with fonts and thinking about the audience that we want to speak to, and wanting things to be modern. And, you know, so T and I, we're all about bringing life to organizations, and, you know, wanting things to be bold and playful and energized. But, you know, one of the main things that we were really that we were sensing in this time is how do we be playful and bring that sense of celebration and joy that we naturally bring while also honoring the sense of gravity of the moment. And we also worked with an amazing web designer, Lindsay from Play and
Mm-hmm.
when we started to really think about what we were communicating with the website and the social media campaign. So we really started to work with Lindsay around systems thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So just thinking about the macro level of the boundaries and the systems that we live in, like you can, a lot of us are at home, most everybody in the whole world is at home. And just kind of like our whole sense of boundaries of things changing in this moment. And then also coming into thinking about ourselves as and our bodies and our sensing systems. So our eyes to see, our ears to listen, our hearts to feel. Yeah, is there anything else you want to say about this stuff, Jyoti?
We'll definitely touch on this more, but the biggest thing is that there's this dance between the macro and the micro, and we'll talk more about this dance between the small systems and how they reverberate and echo and show up within the larger systems. And one of the things we say is it starts with us in our bodies. Empathy starts with us in our bodies, and that's what you see here with the micro system. Yeah, this next slide is great too, because it talks about the energy of connection in between. So, when you think about ourselves as systems, like one human being, am a system unto myself. The globe, the whole world, is the largest system, the system that we're concerned about. But the relationships and the textures in how we transmit emotions, the texture in how we transmit ideas, like the intangible, the implicit, the things that you can't quite describe or measure, or those moments in between, the spaces in between, and the relationships. So yeah, we definitely had a lot of intention behind the systems.
Yes.
And
where we
yeah.
ended up landing as the core graphic that that spoke to all that we were pouring into the empathy tour, in featuring leaders and raising up voices and amplifying issues and themes that we really feel like are what's really going to make the biggest difference in our worlds right now. So thanks for the.
Yeah, the compass is the one other thing that we can mention here. As we were working with Lindsay, our web designer and our graphic designer, we were trying to think about how to like bring it all home. And there was one moment where all of these shapes were kind of scattered on the page and they were all just taking up like the whole website. And we were like, it needs gravity, like everything needs to just tighten up. And this sense of gravity really shows up in this final graphic, as well as the compass. And so the circle it represents the world and the whole system, and the compass represents how we are orienting ourselves or reorienting ourselves to what matters. And so there's really a sense through 2020 of orientation and how important it is which way you're facing. Like, which way are you facing, man? Like, choose your direction, because it matters now more than ever. And so this compass theme is really, it means a lot, and it means a lot to us, and we hope that you feel that. All right, so those are the mood boards and the behind the scenes geekiness is into our design process. So we hope that you enjoyed that. Now we are going to move into who did we decide to feature and why? So the first thing I'll say is industries. Like, we intentionally wanted to talk to leaders in tech and social impact. Why? The reason is, when you think about the signals in the system and all of those things that you saw on that slide in terms of social justice, racial justice, in terms of the ethics of technology and the growing divisiveness between different factions in our community and misinformation and all of those things, we believe that the tech and social impact sectors are the places in the system that we as guides, as facilitators, want to intervene, where we can have the greatest impact and influence things for the better. So that's why we chose those industries.
And in terms of people, we really focused on executives, directors, managers, people with influence, and people that are accountable for people and money and ideas. And we really wanted to listen to how they described their problems. You know, this is an empathy tour. This is a design process. We wanted to hear how they talked about their problems, how they talked about what's working. And in this process of reaching out and starting to highlight CEOs and executive directors, we were able to even just recognize for ourselves our own allegiance to power, and see our own allegiance to power and this kind of this avatar of a good CEO and with a happy crew, and just invite our own exploration and like learning their humanness and empathizing with their humanness. And leaders of teams and CEOs have a tremendous accountability to many people. And I always think about them going to bed at night, and what must be on their mind. And it was just to be in relationship with people in power, even for us in conversation, was really illuminating for Jyoti and I, in terms of our own biases and our own blind spots as well.
Yeah, it definitely showed up, in terms of, we noticed that we felt differently depending on who we were speaking to. And, one interesting tidbit that I'll share that's a personal observation is that it felt really different speaking to women of color, and men. There were a couple of men that we spoke to that really represented like the masculine paradigm. And I noticed myself feeling a little bit more triggered in the moment, like feeling that the pressure of mainstream business culture and the pressure to perform, the pressure to say the right thing, and that feeling kind of disconnecting me from my body, disconnecting me from my senses. And that was an interesting learning, like to be able to see the contrast so clearly between the leaders that we spoke to, and I will say that the leaders that represented the masculine paradigm were a white CEO and an Indian CEO. But there were a couple of others who we spoke to, and this is just another really interesting personal observation, is that the two Black male CEOs that we talked to we felt really comfortable and at ease talking to them. And we see Claudius is on the panel. So we're going to give a shout out to Claudius, because Claudius really represents to us a model of leadership that is balanced, that brings the best of the masculine and the best of the feminine. And we really want to understand and explore how good leadership does play and dance between those paradigms.
And thank you, Claudius, for being our very first interview that we did. You kicked us off well, man. Yeah, diverse voices was really important to us. Oh, Claudius, we love you. Diverse voices was really important to us. As you'll see on the tour, we have a lot of women. We have some beautiful Black women and women of color. And, representation matters. We know this. And we were at a point where we realized, we were thinking about all the people in positions of power that make decisions about who's up, who should be asked to be on a panel, or who should be asked, even in my DJ world, like who gets to play the show, like, and how much the tables had turned that we were like, oh man, we should invite more guys. Like, it was so easy for us.
Yeah.
It was so easy for us to find women, but we actually had to do a bit more work to find the Black women, if you remember. Mm-hmm. And we initially, for Young Women Empowered, we initially interviewed Rose, and she was the one that said, look, definitely like the white women CEOs we've spoken to are very aware of their position of power, and their whiteness. And she really encouraged us to reach out, to Victoria, who we ended up featuring, which was a real honor. And her interview is really beautiful. And Alonda Williams from the YMCA, like, we had to track her down.
Yeah, well, I tried to get introduced to her through like 3 different people, and when that didn't yield anything, I reached out to her directly on LinkedIn and was able to book her for an interview, which was just really gratifying. Like we, it reminds me of like the CEOs who say that diversity is because of a pipeline problem. And no, there are plenty of leaders out there who represent the voices we want to amplify. We found that we needed to work harder to find them, but that it was worth it because that was aligned with our values and how we wanted to show up in this moment. So yay. And so celebrate that, and celebrate Rose, who had the foresight and the understanding to say, don't feature me as a white executive director, feature Victoria, like celebrate her. I want to elevate her voice. And so that was a really key learning point for us as well, is that the choices that we make in who we amplify and who we don't, and who we pass the mic to when perhaps we have this stage, is really powerful.
So we have a few people come, we have a few more interviews left. The tour goes until December 21st. And so we have Naveen from Viome coming up, and we have Martine from Synapse coming up. And we also have Tim, Mr. Future of Work, coming up. So we're really excited about those. And for everybody that's on the call now, we have one final spot open. So we're really curious, what leader out of everything that we've talked about, what leader do you think could be a potential final interview for us? So please holler in the chat or contact us if you have an idea for this last kind of wild card spot before we wrap up this season of the tour.
I love it. I love it. So now we're going to move into the actual questions that we asked all of our leaders, and share with you some of the themes that we heard and the responses that we heard from them. So we have 5 questions, and every single leader got the same questions, the same exact questions, and each interview lasted about an hour. And the purpose of the arc of inquiry for the tour was to really weave meaningful connections between this micro and the macro. And so we wanted to understand and listen to these leaders and understand how they as individuals are making sense of these global issues, and then to understand how they were orienting their organizations to these global challenges, the signals in the system. And then to really understand, weave the connections between them, between themselves, these issues, and the future. So that was the arc of inquiry. And you'll see as we go through these questions that we dance between the micro and the macro.
We definitely started on the macro. And the first question that we asked was, what global issue are you most passionate about and invested in, and why? So I'm actually going to put this in the chat too, because we're curious, for those that are here with us today, what you say. What global issue are you most passionate about and invested in right now? And we keep talking about how everything is connected and everything is at stake. So yes, Jyoti, tell us what started to emerge.
Yeah. So one of the things we heard from almost everybody is that they are all interconnected. That was just a great confirmation, affirmation that yes, these global issues are interconnected and interwoven. And some of the things that we heard, another pattern that we noticed was that everybody kind of responded to the issue that they were most passionate about because it was rooted in their lived experience, and so the folks like Daniela, had struggled with addiction, and her company We Connect is about mental health, and that along with immigration as an immigrant was what she was passionate about. A lot of our Black interviewees were passionate about racial justice. And Ananda from the Y was actually the only Black mother that we interviewed, and she spoke to what it felt like to be the mother of a son and to have to worry about his safety. And it was one of those moments where it just reminded us of what empathy means, and to take stories that we might hear on the news And to translate that to a personal connection, like when you're talking to somebody and you connect with them one-on-one, it takes that anecdote from being a statistic to being something that's really real. And so, you know, people absolutely are more passionate about issues that affect them personally. And that's one of the reasons that we are where we're at, because that, you know, there's a disproportionate effect of these imbalances of power and basic human rights. And so, yeah, so, you know, people spoke to that. So we heard about intersectionality showing up from Victoria and Ananda, and then the disproportionate effects and the digital divide, like the growing divide. And there's divisiveness in so many, just segments, or so many like parts of the system. But the digital divide came up a lot, and Cheryl and Aaron Hurst both spoke to technology and the harmful effects of technology taking us in kind of the wrong direction when it comes to cultivating empathy.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much we could, this is another webinar. This is another webinar too, but to take us along, you know, we started with this global view, and then we really zoomed into each of these leaders and their organizations. Like, we really wanted to find out from them, in their own words, just the wisdom of what was working and what their people really needed. So we asked, what are you sensing your team needs most in this moment in order to be fully engaged and feeling purposeful at work? Tell us how you've been responding and adapting to these needs together.
Yeah, so we heard some great best practices here, and there were definitely unique stories depending on which sectors people were in. So, you know, for the folks who are already in tech or already working remotely, I would say the pivot through this year was easier. Like there was already a familiarity with technology, but they learned that they had to recalibrate how they were looking at employee well-being. Leaders, we heard from you know, Daniela talking about giving her employees an incentive, like $1,000 incentive, and saying that you can choose how you spend this. You can choose it for therapy, or you can use it to buy some ergonomic office equipment. And so this sense of leaders really acknowledging the fact that every person is experiencing this year differently, and they were being attuned to recognizing those differences and responding in a unique way. And then, yeah, Alonda talked, you know, Alonda with the YMCA, who didn't work remotely or with technology, actually found some great benefits to being able to work remotely. And they were able to collaborate and really get some people bought in, right, Emily?
Well, I loved how it was, it leveled the playing field in terms of their own hierarchies of power at the YMCA, like going online and being able to have a lot of these, like, you know, brainstorming meetings. Like they just were able to include a wider range of people more easily. And she said, we just would have never come up with the ideas that we would have if we just kind of kept it to the few that are supposed to have the answers. And we heard a lot of, you know, Ananda from RVC as well, really talked a lot about just that distributed power and how you can really leverage that to really like listen at the margins and come up with better ideas together and just respond better. Especially, I mean, RVC and the YMCA and the companies that are really, and the organizations that are really about providing resources for the community, like they were able to do that better by having that power more distributed. And that was a whole like Pandora's box of like just looking at the hidden hierarchies and the kind of the balancing out that happened when everyone is home. I mean, clearly everybody's working more, and so it was really great to hear them acknowledge, like even with Cleo from the Amplifier organization, just acknowledging that as someone that was not a parent, how she just had a different way that she could work, and really acknowledging that uniqueness of her team.
Mm-hmm.
On her team, yeah.
I also loved, like, piggybacking off of Cleo. You know, Cleo leads an organization of artists, as does Emily Best with Seed and Spark. And so they really talked about the importance of channeling and harnessing the emotions of the moment. And they they said how because they have teams of artists that they feel more deeply, and but they really had to create space to channel those emotions, to carve out space for healing, for dreaming, for visioning, so that they can channel those emotions as fuel that they can then use to do better work. And it was just such a beautiful example of the power of creativity and what creativity really is.
Yeah, and in our feature that's coming out next week with Naveen, he really spoke to that need, that feeling, the missing, those like missed water cooler connection moments, and those like walking for coffees and getting lunch, and like really feeling like the tactical work was getting done well, but yeah, like making that space for kind of like how to make that space for connection and play in this, and for him in dealing with more of a, it was new to have a more like distributed remote team, and I'm really feeling those missing bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we also had to really zoom in on this villain piece of our story, and we really wanted to hear from these leaders, like how they would describe this tension and this cognitive dissonance that many of us live in. So we asked, we see the need to overcome the invasive pressure of mainstream business culture to develop new definitions of impactful, nimble, and innovative organizations. Talk to us about the tensions you feel around this problem and your journey to address it.
Yeah, no, it was, this was such a juicy question. And almost everybody that we spoke to said, oh, good question. And you could see them kind of thinking about this, because it's a deep question, and one that we asked to really allow leaders the opportunity to acknowledge the fact that all of us are participating in systems of harm. We are complicit in upholding systems of harm, while simultaneously challenging those very systems through these organizations. And that's a big deal. Like, to acknowledge what we're doing that's creating harm is juicy. And every leader felt this tension. Every single one felt it and described the opposing forces. And so, the theme or the trend was that this tension appears the most at the boundaries of where their organization interfaces with different stakeholder groups. And so, for example, investors, that this came up so many times, is as CEOs, as founders, as leaders, they can like have a great counterculture all day long, but when it comes to finding investors that are aligned with their values, we heard a lot about wanting to have a diverse cap table, about wanting investors to understand why they were investing in them and not just about making money only, and about how hard it is. This is the part that really just resonated. It's so hard to find investors that are willing to align on values and to invest in something that's beyond just growth at any cost.
Yeah, Emily spoke to this a lot about just like finding, when you start to talk about, setting it up for distributed wealth, how, you have to steer it towards values, because, it's like that wealth hoarding that goes on. And Claudia spoke to this really as well, in terms of aligning with investors about who the real customers are. Like in Claudius's company, New, their customers are actually, it's actually not who you think it might be. It's actually they're focusing on the well-being and the care of the usually the women of color who are doing the actual like cleaning work at these Airbnbs and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
and having to find alignment with investors around that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just
Humera talked about it too, right? Humera, about just like not willing to like kind of like die on the stake for someone else's like benefit, basically.
Well, yeah, she said it. She said that she had a conversation with an investor who said, Humera, I want to know that you're willing to kill yourself to return my money to me. I was like,
yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable.
And then,
who are these people?
the decolonizing work too, and like we were saying, Cleo was really acknowledging just the different capacities of different people, and like and that tension, and also that week that we interviewed Cleo, and she was talking about her own awareness and like her own awareness of her whiteness and the way she's been programmed to like, that sense of urgency and perfection. And that same week, we were trying to push the Ananda RBC feature forward, and we just looked at, interviewing Cleo was like a mirror being held up to us, being like, what are these deadlines about? And like, we're not going to go and like harm Ananda, who's in the middle of a move, to kind of like meet our deadlines. Like, we just totally got to like just chill back and just sense like, okay, let's rearrange things, and let's like make like, where can we make this like easy and beneficial for everybody,
Yeah, we were just going through the process of decolonizing our minds. We're indoctrinated into this deliver at any cost mindset as well. And we realized that the deadlines we had imposed on ourselves were arbitrary. And if we didn't release that week's feature on a Monday, but instead released it on Wednesday or Thursday, that was just fine. We didn't need to pressure our interviewee to stress herself out about it. So yeah, good stuff.
The final question was about vision. So we asked everybody, please paint us a picture of what it looks like when your company succeeds beyond the bottom line. And what does it look like when our business community really operates in alignment with what the world needs?
Yeah, this was a really beautiful way to end the interview, because it allowed these leaders, these visionary leaders, to really just unleash their vision for the world, and for us to start thinking about a place beyond where we are right now, a place that we can see, imagine, feel, and ultimately feel with enough conviction that we can go there. And we heard some great things. Like, one of the ones that stands out is Lauren from Ada Developers Academy, who said, she imagines a future with as many rich and influential women and people of color as possible. She's like, we need to get as many of these people into positions of power and leading systems. And we were like, yeah, totally.
That was Lauren from Ada Developers Academy. Yeah. Yeah, and Aaron from Imperative, he introduced this concept of a moonshot, and just taking like a big bold stand and big bold statement of what's possible in the future. And so for Imperative, their moonshot and their vision that they work toward every day is to flip the statistic that's currently at 66% of people are unfulfilled at work. And by the year 2030, they want to flip the statistic so that 66% of people are fulfilled at work. And just that whole idea of a moonshot, to really just like a bold statement. And it's like, we're going to the moon. We do not know how to get there, but we're gonna, just he was talking about how generative and how magnetizing a moonshot really can be for a business. It's something, you can do for your own life, your family, your organization. Like, where are you going to be in 2030? Like, what does that look like? And then work backwards from that.
Yeah. Naveen had a really great moonshot as well, and his moonshot is to eliminate like chronic disease, basically, to make it a choice. He wants to make chronic disease optional. And it's an interesting thing to note that our masculine leaders really stepped into this, like, these bold visions that seem kind of impossible. But one of the pluses, I think, one of the pluses of the masculine paradigm is being able to be extremely ambitious about what you're capable of doing. So shout out to the benefit in the concept of a moonshot.
Yeah, being audacious, and having it sound ridiculous coming out of your mouth, right? I mean, that's how, if we can speak it, it is possible. There's so much learning here, and one of the main things that we hope that the Empathy Tour has is done for us. It's definitely done for us, and we hope it's done for others, is just seeing that we're not going to solve these problems in isolation. I mean, just in the sense of like, collective liberation means like you're acknowledging the intersection of all of these issues. Each of us focused on the things that really speak to our hearts is what we need. Like, we really need like seeds of change, right? Like spreading to the winds of all four directions, like, elevating us out of this like kind of like either or thinking, and thinking like, if I don't focus on everything, I'm not actually going to make a difference. But like, how we really can solve a lot of these problems collectively.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, to be able to solve these problems and to be able to collaborate enough so that we can move into this space of tension really starts with empathy. If we can't have it, we can't listen if we don't have empathy. Like, we need to have empathy for the person that we're communicating with if we're able to truly listen to them. And we can't have empathy for others if we don't have it for ourselves. And so
Exactly. Just like that, holding your heart and empathizing and sensing around you, like that's empathy. Yeah, and we're all in the move, and we're all in relationship with each other, which is how that collective liberation really starts. Like, we start to kind of magnetize to each other and kind of be a healing force, in our, at home, in our families, in our organizations. And I believe that's why, we're all here at this time. I mean, we're alive in 2020. If you're alive in 2020, you're here facing all this stuff. um, yeah, I love that. Having empathy for ourselves, for sure. Well, um, we've got about 5 minutes left. We want to do some shout outs to some folks, and I'm going to put some of these, their @ handles in the chat, because we have our awesome branding team, Monica and Tony. We have our inspiration, for making this public. We were going to do this all for ourselves anyways, but we got the inspiration to go public, and Willow and her team really helped us with messaging and copy. The website and our socials design was by Lindsay at Play in Public. Our video is produced by Amy LP Productions, local Seattle crew, and the music was from _ recordings, another Seattle label, and our photography was by Holly at Native Light Photos. So thank you to all our crew, and thank you to everyone who joined the tour. Everybody who is on the tour will get all the goodies at the end of the finale. So make sure you have signed up on the website, empathytour.co. Our vision is really that you would be inspired by this and called into action, and to expand your unique expression of leadership and your connection with work and the world, and really influence the teams and organizations that you live in. So we hope this is just the first of many conversations we get to have with you, in many different ways. Yeah.
100%. So we do have a few other ways that you can continue to engage with us. So join the tour, tell a friend or colleague. The final report that will get sent out to all subscribers will include a summary of all of the key themes that we learned on the tour, as well as a PDF of all of the team and individual activities that we lovingly designed to pair with each feature. We also have an offering. So we have a 3-week creativity workshop. It's 3 2-hour sessions over 3 weeks that ultimately helps teams access the power of their creativity, learn about creative flow. And it's really a response to that loss of connection, that loss of bonding that so many teams are feeling. And so it's very playful, it's very creative, and we have that available if you're interested in learning more.
She's got a book coming out.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
While doing all of this, Jyoti also wrote a book. So
yeah, so I wrote a book. I finished my first draft last week. It's called Evolutionary Rescue: Leading Systems Change. And I'm so excited to share it with the world. It's a labor of love. It includes my own personal stories as a woman, an immigrant working at a Fortune 100 aerospace company. I tell a lot of my own stories leading change. I've also interviewed some amazing leaders in tech and social impact and feature their stories. And the plan is to be published by April. I'm launching a crowdfunding campaign this Friday to basically raise money to get the book published. And if you signed up for this webinar, if you signed up for the Empathy Tour, you'll get a notice this weekend or early next week on how to be a part of that campaign. And I would so appreciate your support on that journey. I'm really excited. I'm finally allowing myself to feel excited about it after just slogging for months.
And
Thank you.
I have collected stickers for us, so get me your snail mail address and you can get your Empathy Tour sticker. Yeah, so yeah, just thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for being here today. We are going to end with a little bit of a dance party for these last 2 minutes. We made a mixtape for you, so link to the mixtape, and I'll play this tune. We're so grateful you're here, and you know how to get a hold of us. So
You do.
yeah,
With empathy.
I love it.
Thank you. All right, get up. We're going to dance together. We can't see you, but you can see us. So. Thanks for coming.
All right, let's go feed the kids.
Let's do it. Thank you, everyone. Love. So appreciate you.